Hi, name's Matthew Jester, making a quick video here. So I have a certificate of completion just showing that I'm certified and competent in the field of hypnosis. This is from Mike Mandel Hypnosis Academy. And I'm going to go ahead and get started with my general introduction. Please watch my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. I will leave a link to watch the video in the description. I'll also leave additional links in the description of other relevant videos. I've been abused with hypnosis. My ability to speak is being inhibited with hypnosis, which is why I have to read everything when I make videos. If you notice me stuttering, speaking slowly, being unable to speak clearly, or any other difficulty speaking, I explain in detail the specific methods and techniques that are being used to inhibit my ability to speak in my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. These issues speaking occur consistently in each of my videos, specifically within the first 3 minutes. The hypnosis inhibiting my ability to speak is often very noticeable throughout my videos, and I will leave a list of the various hypnotic commands that are specifically being used to inhibit my ability to speak that can be recognized in my body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, and speech patterns in the description. My speech was being impaired the entire time I was reading that. This video is going to be about hypnosis depriving me of sleep. Since I was hypnotized to inhibit my ability to speak, I began compensating for the hypnotic speech impairment by writing what the hypnosis was inhibiting me from saying. In order to prevent me from compensating for the hypnotic speech impairment by writing, I was hypnotized to inhibit my ability to write. I noticed that if I had a witness around or if I was recording myself, it limited how much the hypnosis was able to inhibit me without being too noticeable. So I began recording myself writing. In order to prevent me from compensating for the hypnosis inhibiting my ability to write by recording myself writing, I was hypnotized to become sleep deprived, specifically before important deadlines, to impair my ability to adapt and compensate as much as possible. One specific example of this was being hypnotized to replicate all the symptoms of sleep deprivation without being sleep deprived as a method of concealing the cognitive impairment being caused by hypnosis to decrease resistance to post-hypnotic suggestions and to prevent other people from recognizing the abuse and the hypnotic impairment. I only experienced the fabricated symptoms of sleep deprivation caused by hypnosis whenever I resist post-hypnotic suggestions, which is abnormal since the presentation of sleep deprivation symptoms are usually relatively consistent, adding suspicion as to the consistency there. So I'm going to go ahead and show some very brief video clips of the most severe examples of hypnotic speech impairment. As an example of the validity and credibility of the allegations I'm making regarding hypnosis and abuse. So these are the most severe examples of hypnotic speech impairment I've experienced that have started over the last 4 weeks. The speech impairment can be seen in the video, specifically in the amount of difficulty and physical strain I experience speaking. That can be noticed in my tone of voice and facial expressions, which are very difficult to fake. I actually have a 23-minute hypnotic speech impairment video compilation of video clips from full-length videos. So to dispel any doubts of the integrity, I will ensure to leave a link to the compilation video and the full-length videos the video clips are from. Sorry, the hypnosis was inhibiting my ability to speak there. You will be able to see some much more severe examples in these video clips right now. Okay, so there's that one. I'll go ahead and show you another example really quickly. So sorry for the video lagging as well in that first clip. Trying to frame me. Okay. And that's that. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go over some variables that can influence the credibility of the allegations I'm making regarding hypnosis and abuse. Similar to how variables are taken into consideration in a scientific experiment, there are 3 different types of variables in a scientific experiment: independent, dependent, and controlled. So in a scientific experiment, the independent variable is what's being studied. Independent variables are intentionally changed in an experiment to compare results. So an independent variable would be like, say, for example, a medication. And when testing that medication in an experiment, they would use a placebo. So then that's why the medication would change to a placebo intentionally to test the efficacy of the medication. A dependent variable is the result of the experiment. So, for example, that would be the efficacy of the placebo, and that would be the efficacy of the medication in a medication experiment. And then a controlled variable, ensuring control over of any variables that could alter or change the results. So, for example, other medications, if somebody was already on a different medication, and that medication interfered with the results or altered the results, that's an example of ensuring of how they would ensure to control the variables in these experiments. So I'm going to go over some of these very similar methods. The primary method of concealing the presentation of hypnosis and validating allegations of hypnosis was instilling the false belief that uncontrolled variables caused the anomalies that were caused by hypnosis. This was a form of psychological manipulation and abuse called gaslighting, which involves invalidating and questioning a victim's beliefs, reality, and its insanity. To ensure my credibility, I've ensured that all other variables are controlled as much as possible and cannot be falsely accredited for the elicitation of the hypnotic effects, which is very similar to controlling variables when conducting scientific experiments. So mental illnesses such as bipolar 1 and 2 or schizophrenia cannot cause motor tics or vocal tics as symptoms, invalidating any claims that the speech impairment that you may have seen in those videos, for example, were caused by mental illness or various symptoms of mental illness such as delusions, hallucinations, grandiosity, or paranoia. I've never had any motor tics or vocal tics before the age of 18. Like I said, this happened in the last 4 weeks. The severe speech impairment began shortly after I started recording videos about hypnosis and abuse, invalidating any claims that the speech impairment was caused by a majority of existing movement disorders, speech disorders, or tic disorders such as Tourette syndrome or tardive dyskinesia. I'm not taking any medications that can cause tics, such as mood stabilizer medications or antipsychotic medications, invalidating any claims the speech impairment was caused by medications. Sleep deprivation cannot cause vocal tics or motor tics, invalidating any claims that the speech impairment was caused by sleep deprivation. I have not suffered any form of head injury or brain damage, invalidating any claims that the speech impairment was caused by brain damage. I am sober. I'm not using any drugs, alcohol, or nicotine, and these severe speech impairments began in the last 4 weeks, shortly after I started recording myself writing, invalidating any claims the speech impairment was caused by the use of drugs, alcohol, or nicotine. Hypnosis can induce motor tics and vocal tics, and hypnosis can also induce involuntary speech impairments. The other possible variables I just reviewed are controlled and invalidated, resulting in hypnosis being the only valid variable that can scientifically explain the involuntary speech impairment, vocal tics, and motor tics. So, I'll give you an example of an independent variable in this setting. This would be kind of like the placebo in the sense of comparing that to the other samples of those video clips. So, I worked for multiple different call centers for several years, which is a reliable sample of adequate speech capacity and capability without hypnotic speech impairment. The sample could be used to distinguish the variance in speech capacity and capability caused by the independent variable of hypnotic impairment. So, typically very fluent in English and speaking very clearly as well, very professional in that sense, actually. So, this is going to be, I'm going to go over some examples of the sleep deprivation now. One method of depriving me of sleep was hypnotizing me to feel severe itchiness in my inner ear canal, as if I needed to clean out my ears with a cotton swab. The reason I know this is caused by hypnosis is because the itchiness would subside after cleaning my inner ear canal with a cotton swab under normal circumstances, but with hypnosis, the itchiness persisted as a form of punishment to deter me from using earplugs. The hypnosis also did the exact same thing with earbuds, when I would be watching videos for my hypnosis course online as a form of punishment to deter me from watching the videos. This was done to attempt to make me believe the earplugs were preventing me from sleeping when the hypnosis was actually depriving me of sleep and the earplugs were actually helping me sleep. And that's how that is a form of sleep deprivation, to prevent me from using earplugs. They're helping me. So I'm going to go over a metaphor. Metaphors are, of course, symbolic, and they are not literal. So the hypnotist that told me they were going to take me to the laundromat, the hypnotist told me they were going to take me to the laundromat. I was hypnotized to feel dizziness, confusion, nausea, dysphoria, drowsiness, disorientation, and to experience memory loss whenever I resisted post-hypnotic suggestions. And I was hypnotized to feel like my brain was spinning in a washing machine on the spin cycle, turning to mush because they were, quote, brainwashing me. So, you know, like I said, it's a metaphor. They weren't literally washing my brain in a washing machine, of course, but that's what they hit, you know, that's what they symbolized with the metaphor and involving cognitive inhibition. So, hypnotic sleep deprivation, regarding, I had a couple dreams that I was actually hypnotized to have. So, I'll go over these. I was sleeping on a couch and thought, I'm resisting post-hypnotic suggestions, maybe I should wake up, and then woke up immediately afterwards, unable to fall back to sleep. The second dream I had was just about making YouTube videos about hypnosis, and then I woke up in the middle of the night. Very similar circumstance, just not as direct about sleep deprivation as the first dream, but I was easily able to recognize that the dream was caused by hypnosis and cued me to wake up in the middle of the night. Let's see. So I'm going to go over some metaphors, some more metaphors. This gets a little bit complicated, but if you listen through the entirety of the video, then you understand the necessary context to make sense of the metaphors. And once you have that essential context for understanding, then it'll make a lot more sense. I was told that I was given therapy for the eating disorder I developed after finding my friend's dead body, and that I was given aromatherapy with an essential oil while hypnotized in the emergency room by the social worker to conceal evidence of the eating disorder. I was told that was the reasoning for why, not necessarily though. I was also hypnotized to think that my dead friend smelled, quote, fragrant, which was cued right before eating to deter me from eating. The social worker also hypnotized me to make a face where I would purse my lips and crinkle my nose, called it the stink face, and hypnotized me to think, you stink, dude, as well as calling me the, quote, stink face snitch. So the face that I was hypnotized to make looked like this. As you can see, it's a very abnormal face to make, and I'll go ahead and elaborate. I was also threatened that they were going to use my innocence regarding my dead friend, McKay Cody James, to try to make Donald Trump look innocent and then frame me for it. Another hypnotic command I was given that was cued before eating was to vividly remember a video from PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, that Peter J. Island showed me while hypnotized of a cow having their eye gouged out whenever I attempted to eat any meat and or dairy product, forcing me to eat vegan for about 1 to 2 months. I believe this was done to distract attention from how I was hypnotized to think my dead friend smelled fragrant before eating because it didn't involve a murder. The hypnosis is inhibiting my ability to talk and making me feel shaky. The hypnosis did treat all the symptoms from the eating disorder, although the aromatherapy had nothing to do with treating the symptoms, and I remember an olfactory hallucination of the essential oil being cued when I was thinking about Donald Trump committing murder and when I was shopping in Walmart. Shopping in Walmart might have actually related to food, although I was hypnotized to think it had something to do with financial exploitation to encourage me to spend more money because the smell was pleasant, and I was hypnotized to think of LSD when I smelled it because it was an olfactory hallucination, and LSD is known for hallucinations. I was also hypnotized to think it meant something related to COVID-19, MK Ultra experiments, and fried chicken. And I'll go ahead and move on. The essential oil was likely used for operant conditioning as a form of positive reinforcement or reward to promote certain behaviors because the smell was pleasant. When I thought about Donald Trump committing murder, I was hypnotized to make the stink face simultaneously, cued the olfactory hallucination of smelling the essential oil, and to feel euphoria to promote the behavior of making the stink face. Operant conditioning would also explain how the olfactory hallucination would be used to condition and encourage spending money as a means of financial exploitation. So that's called operant conditioning. I do discuss that in my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition, so make sure to watch that. I was hypnotized to feel back pain in the small of my back, right between my shoulder blades, by contracting the muscles on the right side of my back so that I would be in pain and need to crack my back for relief, because the contractions would put pressure on the spinal cord, requiring you to crack your back for relief. I was hypnotized to contract all the muscles in my back to prevent compression of my spinal cord so that I couldn't just crack my back for relief whenever I tried to crack it. I was also hypnotized to feel an intense desire to crack my back frequently and to imagine seeing Donald Trump's back in a navy blue suit jacket and to imagine how easy it would be to crack his back with his broad shoulders when I felt the desire to crack my back, and to imagine that if I was able to crack his back, it would feel like I cracked my back. This was used as a form of dissociation, and I was hypnotized to imagine the hypnotist that told me this, Peter J. Island, telling me, "Go ahead, crack his back, the president wants you to do it." When the back pain was triggered, I was hypnotized to think I would be breaking Peter's back when I would attempt to crack my back. I was hypnotized to think you can't be sexy for it whenever I tried to crack my back. I didn't know why I was hypnotized to feel back pain for several years until I was cued to remember that it was supposed to metaphorically reference a PTSD nightmare in which my sleep doctor was picked up and dropped onto his back repeatedly, breaking his back in extremely graphic detail. This specific nightmare was the most vivid and graphic nightmare I've ever had, and since the nightmare was about sleep deprivation, this was used to relate the breaking my back metaphor to hypnotic sleep deprivation. I was hypnotized to think breaking their back had several different meanings, including talking to my mom was breaking their backs because she's got my back. Having credibility was breaking their backs. Breaking the news was breaking their backs. Breaking the hypnotic seal was breaking their backs. Putting Donald Trump in prison was breaking their backs. Investigating Donald Trump for murder was breaking their backs. Breaking the hypnotic laws they made for me was breaking their backs. I described what this means in detail in my video, Hypnosis, Abuse, and Speech Inhibition. The hypnotic commands they told me were like hypnotic laws I had to follow, and that's what they meant by breaking the hypnotic laws, was resisting post-hypnotic suggestions or resisting hypnotic commands. And I was also hypnotized to think breaking the jail was breaking their backs. Since I was framed for crimes I didn't commit, I was hypnotized to think that proving my innocence was like a jailbreak, because if I couldn't go to jail for crimes I didn't commit, it would be like I broke the jail because the jail wouldn't work anymore. It would be broken. I was hypnotized to think making videos to put the abusive hypnotists in prison was breaking their backs, and that since I wouldn't stop making videos, that the only thing they could do to stop me was depriving me of sleep so that I would get off their backs. So that's how that got related, and then that goes back into the stink face here pretty soon. So right now I'm going to talk about Donald Duck hypnotic suggestions. When I thought of Plattsburgh, New York, I was hypnotized to think Donald Trump is in prison and guilty of murder, and to imagine Donald Trump in a blue suit being flat, and I was hypnotized to think it meant having to, quote, decompress. Not knowing what it meant, but I was also hypnotized by Christine Price to think it was a very bad thing. Whatever it meant, I was also hypnotized to think of a platypus when I thought of Plattsburgh, because the first syllable plat is identical in the words platypus and Plattsburgh, as well as being hypnotized to imagine how a platypus bill is relatively flat and how a duck's bill is relatively flat, and how plat and flat rhyme, and I was also hypnotized to imagine Donald Duck when I thought of Plattsburgh. So, this was all very confusing, and it didn't make sense until I connected these hypnotic suggestions with other hypnotic suggestions, kind of like how you can't recognize the picture on a puzzle with only one puzzle piece, but the more puzzle pieces you combine, the clearer and easier the picture is to recognize. The other two puzzle pieces in this part of the picture are Peter J. Island and Kathleen Island hypnotized me to think that my dead friend, McKay Cody James, smelled, quote, fragrant when I tried eating. The social worker at Jordan Valley Medical Center making me smell an essential oil after hypnotizing me and telling me that it was therapy for the eating disorder I developed after finding McKay Cody James dead in the woods, by hypnotizing me to make something called a stink face and calling me a, quote, stink face snitch, and how when I was hypnotized to crack my back, I would have to bend over and arch my back to make it crack, and it would almost be like I looked like a duck while doing it and being hypnotized to think you can't be sexy for it. So what this means, by the way, is, like when you, when I'd have to arch my back like this in order to apply the compression between my shoulder blades to crack my spinal cord. And with the position there where my butt would be sticking out, kind of like as if I, and my back would be arched, very similar to how a duck is, kind of arched horizontally with her spinal cord. So moving on from that, It's also related because it actually is explained in here. So I'll go ahead and finish. The metaphors are all become related in the context of making the, quote, stink face a viral trend, because it could also be referred to as a, quote, Donald Duck face, since it's basically the, quote, Donald Trump committed murder version of the duck face. Except since you can't be sexy for it, it would be more difficult to make into a viral trend. So the stink face, again, would be like this. And I mean, you know, just implying along the lines that they don't want me to become famous for being abused by them, right? Because that's difficult for them to get away with. And moving on from that, the decompressed and flat visualization I was hypnotized to imagine was a reference to the flat anti-marijuana couch commercial that I designed a political parody of to legalize marijuana for a YouTube channel I was going to make called Above the Propaganda. The reason this was referenced in the metaphor is because one of the primary reasons I was hypnotized was to prevent me from making that YouTube channel. The metaphors were typically used to cause confusion, distract attention, and to discredit me. All of the post-hypnotic suggestions had functional purposes that were concealed by the metaphors. The stink face and back pain were intended to conceal the physical strain I experienced speaking from hypnosis, inhibiting my ability to speak by creating the false impression that the physical strain speaking was being caused by pain and not by hypnosis. I was also told that the stink face was supposed to deepen wrinkles, forming dark circles underneath my eyes, and to make it look like I was on drugs or mentally ill. The back pain was used as a form of punishment to deter certain behaviors, specifically whenever I tried to finish something quickly by increasing the amount of pain felt the faster I attempted to finish, and while writing and speaking was used to attempt to allow the hypnosis to inhibit me undetected. Last thing was the back pain was also used to inhibit my ability to write without me being able to notice it, because my attention would become focused and fixated on the back pain and tensing up all the muscles in my body while I was writing. And to focus on the strain and difficulty I was hypnotized to experience writing instead of how fast I was writing, so that it could inhibit me undetected. And anyways, that's what ended up happening. So thank you very much for watching the video. I really do appreciate it. I hope you have a great day.